feature presentation.
Welcome back to another Untitled Movie Review. I am one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck, alongside, he's allergic to tomatoes, but he is tomato meter approved, Eric Merchant.
Matt, are you feeling marvelous today?
I have a marvelous day every day, Eric. Welcome back from Aruba. We've been on a little bit of a hiatus because of, a plethora of things. Our schedule this year, completely out of whack. Much like some of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But we're back at it. Eric's back from Aruba. We'll have a ton of reviews in the next couple weeks for some awesome stuff. You guys can check out what I thought about the Loki finale over on Kind of Funny on Screencast. I popped over there to talk about the Loki season 2 finale and the series as a whole with that crew, which was awesome. So we have some stuff out there, but we've taken a little bit of a break. This year's been a little bit all over the place, but I think for the rest of the year moving into next year, we should be on a more regular schedule. It just kind of depends on what we have going on. But I always love when we have a new MCU movie, Eric, and when we can talk about it and the future of the MCU and if this movie worked or did not work. It's been out for a few days. We're a little delayed recording this, so we are going to go full spoilers on this one. So if you haven't seen the Marvels, quickly, I think it's a fun movie. I don't know if you need to rush out to go see it. You could probably wait for Disney Plus or something like that, but it is a big budget, action heavy movie with some fun fight sequences. I do really think it is worth seeing. It's light, it's easy, it's 97 minutes. I definitely think that you could maybe I don't understand the hate for it that it's getting, because I actually just think it's kind of more of these easy watches that don't need to necessarily be the next greatest big thing. They just can be fun popcorn movies, I think, are worthwhile. So if you haven't gone to see it, Eric and I feel similar. You'll get our full thoughts in a moment, but we are going to just talk about the movie as a whole since it's been out for a while. Okay, that's the whole spiel. Eric, how are you though? Welcome back.
Well, thanks, Matt. I just quickly want to say it was delightful seeing you as a floating head on the Kind of Funny podcast video show of it. Just you just being whoa, and everybody else being in studio was great. And also, just wanted to quickly mention, you posted this on your Instagram today, so people that are watching now probably have no context for this, but you're meeting some furry new friends out there.
Oh, I went for a walk today, and this is what the people came for when they clicked on the Marvels review. I went for a walk right before this with my wife, and man, we were walking. We go on this walk right near our house in Toronto, in North Toronto, Etobicoke area. This walk we go on all the time, and man, 5 feet from us, 10 feet from us on this path that we always walk, just this big ass deer with this buck. And I was like, holy shit. We just stopped there. And then there was a buck and a doe that were right there, whether they were husband and wife, brother, sister, who knows? But they were or mother or father, daughter, who the hell knows? But it was this big ass buck and this small doe. And they were 10 feet from us, and they were I guess really used to seeing and for those of you that are in the US, not a common thing to just see deer, as much as you might not know anything about Canada. It's just, and this is a pretty suburban area for the most part, and it is a very beautiful walk, but we just stood and watched this deer for a while because it was so fucking close to us, and I've never been that close to a deer. You usually see them and they get very skittish and run off right away or whatever, but it just stood there, and I got a really cool photo. So if you're watching this right away or listening right away, you can see that on my Instagram, and maybe it's just a picture of a deer, but it was cool to me in the moment. Now.
It was cooler than the Winter Soldier, that's for sure, Bucky, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right, but Nia DaCosta's The Marvels, our first kind of team up, not our first, but the first in a while team up movie, taking 3 characters from different franchises, 2 of those characters being from Disney Plus shows. So the kind of the first time we're seeing major Disney Plus characters have major roles in a film, as well as bringing back Brie Larson's Captain Marvel for a second go around after a few cameos in the Avengers movies and things like that. We're recording this on Sunday, so we will add this into the conversation. And Eric and I usually like to talk about, the history or the future of the MCU and the history at the end of these episodes. But didn't perform super well. Might be the lowest weekend for an MCU movie ever, or in a very long time. So that's kind of a bummer, but we'll get into all of that. But first, I already kind of gave my quick thoughts when I warned people about spoilers. So Eric, I'll kick it over to you. What did you think of Nia DaCosta's The Marvels?
Yes, as my dog Boris barks in the background. I'm pretty much on the same page as you. I'm not wearing my Martin Scorsese shirt, so I didn't think it was bad. And I think a big part of that is that Nia DaCosta realizes that this is a movie that can just be fun. It can be disposable entertainment. You can have something that's under 2 hours and still sell the point of what you're doing, which is a team-up movie, but you don't necessarily have to make it precious and about sort of like, these characters and their evolution is the most important thing within 2 to 3 hours worth of entertainment. So when you're watching something like this, you feel as if you're in and out, and you've gotten everything you needed to get from this kind of, I guess, another sort of stepping stone movie in a way. It's very ephemeral. It kind of dissolves out of your mind after you've watched it. I probably won't think about it again. But there's some good stuff in there. I think Iman Vellani in particular is excellent here. And she has this kind of effortless exuberance that really brings an enthusiasm to the narrative. I wish I saw what Ms. Marvel saw in Captain Marvel in terms of her fandom of her, because the way she talks about her, the way that she's obsessed with this character, I want to see that in Brie Larson's performance. And I never did. And I think that if you do, or if you can get there, I think it would help quite a bit in really making the movie special. But because it's not reciprocated in that way, it kind of feels a little bit one note. The most sort of exciting aspect of Captain Marvel is the animated version that you see in the drawings of Kamala Khan. And so when you're watching this, you think to yourself, man, like, that version of Captain Marvel is so amazing. And Brie Larson is a very good actor, obviously an Oscar winner. Short Term 12 is an amazing performance, and she's done some excellent work. But there's just something here about that kind of stoic quality that kind of feels a little bit stilted and awkward, and she hasn't really found her footing in that way. And so you have someone like Iman Vellani really doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and so does Teyonah Parris as Monica Rambeau. And there are moments within the dynamic between Monica and Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, where you're watching Monica be a little bit more resistant to having that family reunion with Aunt Carol, because, there's some animosity there. There's a little bit of tension with getting back to meeting somebody because you feel like there's some unresolved issues. And that felt very real. And that was, I think, some of the best stuff in this film, when it comes to
coke on my keyboard.
Oh my God, what have you done? But that's the stuff that I think works the best. And the idea of asking for help when you need it, and not sort of taking the sole responsibility of saving the universe by yourself, and actually, making this effort to reach out to somebody, whether it be extending the olive branch or just saying, hey, can you help me with something that, in terms of what I need to do and complete it, but also just like to be someone to talk to in a situation and to kind of resolve those issues and not take it on all alone, I think is what really is sort of the main selling point of it. It's not the action set pieces. It's not, the villain of the week played by Zawe Ashton, who's another Cree sort of head facilitator that's kind of, coming into the situation and creating this sort of jumping off point, a little jump point that has these sort of Marvel characters switching places every time they power up. So yeah, the strongest stuff there is the bonding between the trio, but also just the idea of Monica having some sort of she's a little bit resistant towards meeting up with Captain Marvel again, and I think that stuff is really what sells the film.
Yeah, we're pretty much exactly on the same page. Even me as the bigger kind of MCU guy that does want these movies to continue to succeed and this universe to continue to succeed and, reinvent itself and evolve and different things like that. Like, I do think this movie's a bit of empty calories. Like, it's just, like you said, sort of in your eyeballs, outside the back of your head. You're not really kind of retaining a ton of it. I think it's an improvement on the first Captain Marvel movie. For me personally, like the more I watch that movie, the more it just never clicks. I don't think Brie Larson really worked in the role. Like, I just find the 90s setting felt kind of irrelevant in that. And like, there's not a ton there to enjoy in that first Captain Marvel movie. I think it's fine. But I think Iman Vellani is the standout, is the future of the MCU, or one of the futures of the MCU. I think she injects such a burst of energy into this, much like the energy that you found in the Miss Marvel show. I think her interactions with Carol and Teyonah Parris's character, Monica Rambeau, like I think that the three of them work really, really well together, where I think it does elevate the Captain Marvel character and elevate Brie Larson's performance, where she's a little bit of a part of an ensemble instead of having to carry the movie on her back. I'm with you where she still hasn't quite figured out the role, I think, and I don't think that's fully her fault. I think it's, Kevin Feige and, the brain trust of the MCU, and even DaCosta working on this movie. Like, they brought a little bit more personality into Carol Danvers into this, I think, but still not enough, to your point, which is a great one, of like what Kamala sees in Captain Marvel, right? And you go and you start to think of going like, why would this character be so obsessed with Captain Marvel? Like, has she gotten enough of her to really, like, obviously there's comic books and there's all these different things made from her. And I know that when they all saved the universe in Endgame, that it made them all these gods essentially that people idolize. And, the addition of Carol being, I know there was Black Widow and things like that, but the first prominent, like, woman on the Avengers team, and being such a huge part of, and that's not superhero woman on the Avengers team, because Black Widow's in a little bit of a different character category is what I'm talking about. But
well, yeah, even the idea of like a solo movie, right? Because it took Marvel a lot longer to get Black Widow's own film or Captain Marvel, where that was like the one criticism or positive on the DC side of things, where Wonder Woman came in right away, and it made Marvel look a little bad in terms of well, we need to get more female representation here in terms of a solo movie.
And part of you goes, okay, that's maybe why Kamala's so obsessed with Captain Marvel. And I understand it. As a young woman, she would be, especially who loves the Avengers and loves superheroes. So I kind of get it. But then you're starting to see a little bit more of that and that personality in this movie. I don't think it fully works, but them as a trio is phenomenal. I think some of the action sequences are a blast. Like, I do like the power switching and the entanglement through all of them. I think the first sequence that's happening in the three panes of action in Kamala's home in Jersey, on the space elevator with Nick Fury coming down from Sword, as well as Brie Larson on, I forget where she is, but fighting somewhere else. But the three of them all kind of jumping back and forth. And I think it was chaotic in the sense where they didn't know how they were switching, but the action and the music and everything really worked in that sequence. I would like to see a little bit more of it in that final act when they're using it against
it's Zawe Ashton's character.
Yeah, what's it? Darvel? Is that her name? Or no?
I thought it was Darben.
Darben, thank you. I keep going Vel because of Marvel. Yeah,
but that also goes to show you how
the villain is the weakest
so disposable.
Part. And it's nothing against Zawe Ashton, but like I I really just feel like it is, you mentioned villain of the week. Marvel's always kind of had a villain problem other than a few standouts. This kind of continues that, where it is a little bit of, what's his name from the first Captain Marvel movie, and he was in Guardians and stuff too. God, why am I blanking on everything today?
Captain Marvel and Guardians. Well, I know Lee Pace, right?
Yeah, Lee Pace's character. Yeah, okay. See, that's the thing. Like, it's just it completely just
evaporates.
I know, and this is someone who is obsessed with this and knows a lot about this universe, but there are certain aspects where you're like, that just vanilla or boring, or the motivations are fine and the movie moves at a very fast pace, almost too fast at times, but then you're kind of appreciate the short runtime because it doesn't kind of linger on things that are just nonsensical or don't really need more depth. Like, yeah, would you like a little bit more from the three leads and things like that? Yes, but like we got that in those individual shows with Monica in WandaVision and a whole show on Miss Marvel, and we've gotten a lot from Captain Marvel in the first film and subsequent Avengers movies, even though she's not in those a lot. But I think you get enough where you can just kind of drop them into an adventure. It's very comic booky in a good way. And yeah, I overall I think it's a really good time. I laughed quite a bit. I thought the action was fun. And yeah, does it have, could you skip this and be okay if you're like an MCU, you want that interconnected universe of what that big, multiverse saga story is, other than maybe a post-credit sequence, like, and some punching of holes into reality and time and space and stuff, which is like, they are using time and space in the multiverse in every single movie, even if it's like in a little way to try to tie everything together in this saga. But much like Secret Invasion, which again never mentioned once in this,
well, I guess the mention show would be you have Nick Fury in this, and then also the Skrulls are a part of it, but it does feel like not the writers for this, including Nia DaCosta, but as the Marvel machine doesn't know what to do with them, because in this storyline you have the Skrulls in a moment of feeling like they're dislocated and they are being moved from one planet to another. Yeah, and then you have the Kree that they're kind of trying to find like a way to sort of keep the peace, and Nick Fury's sword is kind of coming in and sort of helping with the negotiations, and it's very delicate in terms of how they're handling things, but it then kind of removes that completely. And then when that's removed, I don't need to have another hour kind of dealing with that, obviously, like that's fine.
Oh, we got a whole show about that. Yeah.
But it does feel at this point, they don't really know what to do with those characters. And even the sort of the peace treaty aspect of it and the intergalactic politics of it, it almost felt a little bit like Star Trek 6, where you had Starfleet Academy sort of trying to find a common ground with the Klingon, but it just never really resolves to the point where you have Tessa Thompson come in and she's just like, okay,
which I missed because I was
Klingon to New Asgard.
Yeah, which doesn't, here's the thing. So, okay, spoilers, everyone. We're going to spoil Secret Invasion. We won't spoil Loki season 2 yet because I know it just aired. We will talk a little bit about it at the end of this show. But at the end of, Eric, have you even caught up with Secret Invasion? But you don't care. Oh, you did watch it? It's terrible. It's really bad.
I didn't need to watch it.
No, you didn't at all. But like at the end of that show, Nick Fury goes up with his Skrull wife to Sword or in the Sword Station in the sky. And then you have Dermot Mulroney's president of the United States declaring war against all aliens on Earth. And then it seemed like the last of the Skrulls were on Earth, but then in this movie, you're like, nope, joke. They're actually here as well, and they're spread around. And then you have Valkyrie come in and take them back to Earth, which was just unless this takes place right before Secret Invasion, which could be possible, but.
That's weird too. That's very convoluted then, because.
But I think this was originally supposed to come out before it, right? So like,
right.
Because Nick Fury's wife, nowhere to be found when all of this is happening. She would have been one of the people eaten by the Flurkins to be brought back down to to Earth and stuff. And you don't think Nick Fury's running to his wife to be like, hey, shit's going down. We need you to a cat to eat you to bring you back down to Earth. So like it's shit like that where Secret Invasion just it feels like this weird thing that happened that they might just pretend never happened. like
the Eternals with one of the gods, the frozen god, right?
In the I think they will go back to that. There are rumors that in Brave New World, the Captain America movie, that they might revisit that, but then we've also heard that they might reshoot that entire movie. So
and that's I think that is the problem with some of the Marvel movies, is because they are catering to the widest audience possible. Yeah. So when they do the test screenings and something doesn't play or doesn't track, they'll reshoot it and then they'll rewrite it and then
there's too many cooks in the kitchen too, right? Where if you have Kevin Feige can't be in a million places at once. And yes, you do have a brain trust that's kind of guiding all of these things, but one of the biggest problems I think is oversaturation, and there's been too many things, and when they all have to connect, it's hard. And this is a very comic booky thing, right? Like this is why comic books were so hard to get into for some people, is because the continuity, right? Is like you jump in and you're reading an Iron Man comic, but then there's like storylines from other comics, and then there's this whole history where some of it is continuity, some of it's not, but then books contradict themselves because Iron Man does one thing in this book, but when he shows up in another book, it's something different. And like, so we're starting to see that trickle into the movies and TV shows because of this oversaturation, where you go, wait, does Secret Invasion, like, did that not matter? No, it didn't. I'm like, okay, well, does that, you start to go, well, does it take place after? And then you're like, well, I'm overthinking this. It doesn't matter. Nothing from that show is going to like continue on. You left it with a incredibly overpowered, probably the most powerful being in the universe, with God, this is how forgettable that series was, and I'm really bad, but what's her name from Game of Thrones, Emilia Clarke's character, being like a super Skrull that has every power from every Avenger, and you're like, what? Like, and then now wouldn't that be the person you call for anything? So it's just like, all right, let's maybe hope that when reality breaks, that gets erased from. I think
reality's already broken at this point. And
so, anyways, we're overthinking it. But I think watching this movie, those are things that I'm thinking about. However, the movie is so much fun that I go, who cares? You get to a point where you're like, don't take it too seriously and just try to have fun with it. And yes, it can all be connected. Yes, it can be building to a giant saga or something like that, but like, also, if you notice continuity errors or things aren't all adding up or it's taking too long, it's like, everyone just relax, like just try to enjoy them. And I do think we have an oversaturation problem. But the thing is, with Loki season 2 that just finished and the Marvels, it kind of gave me like a glimmer of hope where I'm like, no, this thing isn't dead quite yet. Like, it's not. Like, it's people calling for its funeral, I think, is way too early. I think, this is getting very mixed reviews. It's not performing well at the box office. I don't know what the viewership on Loki was and stuff like that, but I think that Loki finale, which was, I think, the MCU at its best, where it's character driven, but the special effects are great. The action sequences are fun. The storytelling is on point, where it's bringing back the 15-year history of a character and making it all come full circle. And it is the reason why I love this shared universe. It is the reason why I continue to love these movies and these shows. But then you can have something like this too, that can just be like a fun reprise for a bunch of characters that didn't get to interact yet, and they all get to interact together and have a good time and beat a bad guy, and that can be it. And it's like, okay, we left you some little Reese's Pieces that might go to Kelsey Grammer, but like it's like it's and that's fine. It's just like, okay, when will we see the payoff of that? I'm still also wondering why they didn't revisit the Shang-Chi post-credit sequence in this or something yet, and like, but I guess that will be for Shang-Chi and his second movie, or Kang Dynasty or something like that. But yeah, I'm rambling on a little bit. And the rest of the movie, like, I like the Flurkin sequence with the memories from Cats, right? Is it Memory that they play? I thought that was a lot of fun. There's some really funny jokes actually, like when Kamala's falling and then swaps with Carol at the last minute, and Nick Fury goes, "Oh, it's just Carol." Like when she hits the ground, I laughed really hard at that.
I think Teyonah Parris handles the exposition of summing up WandaVision pretty well.
Oh, it's so funny, dude. I laughed really, really hard. And when it's self-aware like that, it can be very, very funny when the characters say something that they know is absolutely ridiculous. And like just the chances that, the little girl from Captain Marvel also gets superpowers because of thing. It's ridiculous, right? Once you start actually thinking about it all, like just the coincidence of it all and things like that. But
that's also interesting as well, right? Like in terms of what I was talking about before with like even the family
was
dynamic.
It he who remains the whole time? He's been painting the way.
Yeah. Do you have control of your own destiny, or is it somebody else controlling it? But the idea that Kamala Khan is, fanning out over Captain Marvel, where you see Monica now kind of being a little bit more reserved or jaded by who Carol Danvers is and Captain Marvel is. You see that aspect of like, okay, well, Monica was where Kamala was when she was maybe even a little younger, where she idolized her aunt, as a superhero and always wanted her to come back. But now, when you grow up, you see your heroes differently. And even the idea in this storyline of holding Captain Marvel accountable for her own actions, and how she treats the Kree and the planet of Hala. I thought that was actually really well done in terms of criticizing the heroes of being faulty, or when you see some of the Skrulls dying when their planet is being terraformed and, they're being displaced and not all of them are saved. I think that does work, even though you do feel like maybe that's a little too serious for something like this fun.
Yeah.
That almost is where like the secret invasion aspect is coming in a little bit.
I almost wish they went further into those, but the movie moves at such a breakneck pace and is scaling more towards the fun side of things that I also really like. The Captain Marvel went back to Hala and destroyed the Supreme Intelligence, which then made that planet crumble, and then never went back to fix anything or try to fix things, or maybe sort of did, but then just was so embarrassed by it that she just kind of went into, like, I like that kind of character building of like why she never went back to Earth and why she was trying to do things in space and things like that too. So I just, the movie doesn't go super deep into any of that because it's probably short. I'm sure a longer cut probably did, but then probably just slogged the movie down. So they probably just chopped a lot of that out. But I agree with you that both those and even like you can't save everyone, to your point, like those are two pretty good concepts that are just kind of touched on in this movie, even though tonally maybe doesn't work with the rest of it.
Yeah. And when you're watching those scenes, they do feel like they're from a maybe tonally darker film, where a lot of the movie is about sort of like the fun of, swapping back and forth and playing with those action set pieces and the editing of the film.
Them figuring out the powers to intergalactic was kind of fun too. I like that.
Yeah. I think what I was most surprised about, and I don't know if it was really a good thing. It was just more so like, oh, I didn't realize that until the end credits, because the cinematographer has Sean Bobbitt. I didn't know that this is Steve McQueen's, go-to DOP, and he just shot Judas and the Black Messiah. And The Place Beyond the Pines. So when you're watching this, there's not a lot there that would suggest his signature, but it is interesting that he's shooting this in the same way that Robert Richardson shot, Venom 2.
Yeah, I mean,
or Matthew Libatique shooting the first Venom,
Yeah, or the first couple Iron Man movies, but he was shooting those back on film, and those look really great. I don't know if anything stood out to be like, oh, damn, this looks better than other Marvel movies, right? But
it's
like,
not Rachel Morrison. That's
no, and I think that there are moments like the cinematography is good, but in a serviceable way, right? Like there's never once where I'm like, oh, this looks ugly. Like the movie does look like a $200 million movie, right? It's not like some of the Disney Plus shows where you're like, some of the special effects don't work, or even in Thor: Love and Thunder or Quantum Mania when you start to see some special effects and you're like, oh boy. I never noticed that quite in this movie. Like it did seem expensive, more on the Guardian side of things, because it is that cosmic side of stuff where it felt like it was on that level with the special effects. And then with Sean Bobbitt's cinematography, I did think the fight sequences were shot fairly well, of the camera following the characters, and then that swapping felt pretty seamless to me. And I thought the choreography in the action sequences, and especially with the camera choreography, actually worked quite well with them. But yeah, I agree with you that it's not like Black Panther, and where you go, oh goddamn, this looks really, really good, or there's some really interesting, camera choices and stuff like that. But it's serviceable. That's, I guess, and it lets him go out there and go, okay, yeah, let me try my hand at a superhero movie, right? Will he do one again? Maybe not, but
or maybe he will, because these guys, like, you have to think of like actors, or like anybody in any field. It's like sometimes these smaller movies, don't, Hunger is one of the best shot movies, I think, in the last 20 years, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's like, okay, it's going to sustain them financially. So you need to look for work. And, a lot of directors, when they're not making movies, and James Gray's talked about this a lot, is they'll go and shoot commercials. Earl Morris does that all the time too. So, there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't, sort of taint their brand or anything. It's just like work is work, right?
Oh, and
you're
money
just
is
looking
money,
for
man.
work.
Like,
but it is
like
interesting
the
when you
Daniels
have
doing
one of those
Star
guys.
Wars too, right?
Yeah,
like doing
or even
episode.
Roger Deakins, branching out and doing the Bond movies.
Yeah.
Obviously those films, they have more of a stamp visually speaking, but you have Greg Fraser with the Batman. So you sometimes do have those cinematographers with such a visually distinct style working with a director who can bring something to it. And Nia DaCosta, like, I wasn't the biggest fan of Candyman, but I think there's some visuals,
though, yeah.
and Teyonah Parris was in that too. And so there were some visuals though in that movie that felt very striking visually, where this doesn't have that. This basically feels like, okay, she almost was a supervisor, working at the Marvel facility for this production and making sure everything was kind of being
it does have the Marvel look
put together,
to it, right? Where again, gonna go back to Loki, the production design and the cinematography in that show, and just the aesthetic of that show, all the even though it's digital grain and digital, additives onto the footage, but the lighting in that show has such a, I love when Marvel kind of breaks out of their look, right? And this does have that slick Marvel look to it, and I get it because it's one of the big team up movies. It's bound to look like that, but I like
it's
when
washed
they break
out in some ways, right? Like that's kind of how, like, you would describe like that slick look that kind of has a televisual quality to it.
Yeah, which nothing wrong with it. I just I prefer when they kind of I wish they experimented more with cinematography and making their films look a little bit different from one another. Some negatives. I'm not necessarily a negative, but Sam Jackson as Nick Fury, probably one, didn't need to be in this movie. Two, just not even phoning it in, but just I bless Sam Jackson for being like, I'll keep taking these paychecks. Like, I'll
what do I have to do? Can I sit in a chair and do it?
That's what I mean. I'm like, he's sitting for what feels like 60% of the movie. And like, it's
because he basically becomes the babysitter to the Khan family throughout this entire thing. And that's basically his job, and yelling. And you brought up a really good point with that Secret Invasion aspect of like, okay, well, yeah, where is his wife in all of this? So is this before Secret Invasion on the timeline or not? And is Secret Invasion, like the Eternals, like most of the Incredible Hulk, going to kind of be ignored, and we keep talking about Loki. What I love about Loki is that it does feel like its own thing, even though it still very much connects to it. And I think watching that season finale this week, I was reminded how far that character has progressed and what Tom Hiddleston has done with that role in this season in particular. In season two,
he's
amazing.
Yeah, and he's up there with Iron Man and Captain America, I think, in that top, and Thor, in that top 4 MCU characters, I think, at this point. Like, I think that character, from where it started as sort of the villain in both the Avengers and the first Thor movie, and being the first big, villain of an Avengers movie, and then from where he goes throughout Dark World and Ragnarok and Infinity War, and then you branch into the Loki series, and it's just amazing. And I hope something with like Brie Larson's Captain Marvel to bring it back around. That, Loki I thought was he was a fan favorite in those early movies, but I don't think until Avengers and even again when he started getting more and more of a spotlight, and I think he came out of his shell in Ragnarok, and then his sacrifice in Infinity War for Thor, and then how you continue that. I just think maybe there's hope that they can figure out the Captain Marvel character. But now, after I think the reaction of these two movies, not just from misogynistic assholes, but just from the public and box office and stuff, like I can't see Captain Marvel being like what they thought she was going to be, like the Captain America, like the leader of the Avengers. I don't know at this point, like, and I don't know who is, but
well, that's the problem. It really doesn't feel like there's one person that stands out in that way that you're describing, with maybe the exception of Loki, when it comes to like who's going to lead the next generation. And I think maybe if we talk about this a little bit, it's a little bit dated now, just in terms of some of the fact checking and information. But that Variety article was really interesting in terms of like what it was talking about, where like it almost felt sort of aimless in where this narrative was going, and the stuff with Kang, and sort of that next phase of Avengers movies. Because what I think audiences became aware that not only were these movies shared universes and shared sort of storylines, but there was a goal that was being built towards, a villain that was in the shadows, that was threatening, that had
that you
sort of immediacy
in the Avengers. And then everything felt like, with the Infinity Stones, I felt like there was a tangible, actual physical thing, and then it was very easy to conceptualize the bad thing that could happen if someone got all of them, right? Even if you didn't know until Mark Ruffalo explains Wong explains the Infinity Stones later, like you still kind of knew that those were all very important, right? And I still think we have the bangles, the quantum bands, we get the reveal of that in this movie, that they are titled the quantum bands, and that they also deal with space and time, which are then connected to the 10 rings, which is why I think we see that post-credit sequence in Shang-Chi, which will then you'll need the bangles and the 10 rings probably to take on what we think is still Kang. The Loki finale leaves it in a place where it could be Kang, or you could easily be like, TVA took care of him, we're watching them, and Kang's fine. He's not a threat, and we can move on to something else.
Dr. Doom or Galactus.
Yeah,
or
like you could go
like
either way, and I think that's them buying themselves time with the trial that's upcoming with Jonathan Majors and things like that. And even we can move on to the very end, unless you had anything else about the main bit of the movie, but we can move on to kind of the post credits and the future of the MCU. We get two sequences, one setting up Young Avengers, which I think we all knew they'd probably set up at some point because of all the young stars they're bringing in the shows and the movies. So you're going to have, Kate Bishop, Kamala Khan, Catherine Newton. You're going to have probably America Chavez.
Xochitl Gomez.
Xochitl Gomez. You're going to have... I don't know. You're going to have the twins from WandaVision. Who else do we have as young kids?
Do we really want the twins from WandaVision?
No, I don't.
I feel like some of these characters, like they're like, I get those ones that you mentioned. Yeah, it does feel like, okay, one, they're a little too young, but they didn't have that
Hulk
much personality.
Son. I keep forgetting about that.
Oh my God.
And then Thor's daughter, I don't know. Are we gonna like? I don't think so. She's too young. But like,
there's got to be like one person who's like a little too old for the group.
Yeah,
that's
we were
like,
saying like,
you know, a little bit
like,
creepy, but like older. Like they're, and who's gonna lead these? Like, I mean,
I'd
they
say
have
Peter Parker, but like, it's just you. If Marvel has their way, I would personally say you have another Spider-Man movie that is a ground level Spider-Man movie, right? With him going back to his roots with the OG costume, and then Kate Bishop's also in New York, Kamala Khan's in Jersey. Like, I think you have to have, and I think you said it in New York too, because of like and you make it kind of an homage to that first Avengers movie. You even with the scene is the Nick Fury scene with Kamala Khan poking fun at it with Iron Man. Recruiting Kate Bishop. So like, I think and Ironheart too. So you have a good group of like, I think of young heroes that I like. That sounds awesome to me. And you call it Young Avengers. You make it this big thing. I hope it's a movie, not a TV show. And I think if you're smart, you get Peter Parker. You've already had him in 2 gigantic Avengers movies, right? You can still have him part of Secret Wars, obviously. I don't know if you need him in Kang Dynasty, but like, if you have if you
got to have him in Kang Dynasty. You have to have Spider-Man is like the big selling point still.
You have him in both movies, you think? I guess
you have to.
Yeah.
He's such like Spider-Man is like the Batman of the MCU, where
but then
like,
he's probably not in Young Avengers then. Like, I don't think.
Well, they'll renegotiate his contract.
Yeah,
I think you want to get him in as many of these movies as you can, because Spider-Man's always been
is the most
popular, selling point, right? And especially if you bring back Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans for the Avengers movies that they're working on.
Probably Secret Wars, probably not Kang Dynasty.
Yeah, because they're not going to be. They're not. Yeah, they're not going to be in all of them. But you can get someone like Spider-Man, and I think like right now where the Marvel Studio sort of complex is, you need something that is going to be a fail-safe, right? That will make a lot of money.
Spider-Man will always be that.
Yeah.
I agree. If you can get them in Young Avengers, which then sets up how they help out in Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, then I think you do that. I would try my ass off to try to do that, because I worry a Young Avengers movie without someone like Spider-Man in there, I don't know if people care. But the minute you put Peter Parker in there with them, like it's like putting Robert Downey Jr. in this first Spider-Man movie. It would have succeeded either way, but to connect it to the MCU and things like that, like I think you have to have Peter Parker in a young Avengers movie, personally. So that's exciting. I've always thought the Young Avengers was a fun concept. I always thought one of the phases, my prediction, or if I was running Marvel, and maybe you're kind of, if you use the name too much, it kind of loses its gusto or its value. But I thought one phase of all Avengers movies would be fun, where you have Young Avengers, you have Dark Avengers, you have Secret Avengers, which Thunderbolts is Dark Avengers essentially. So it's like
Spotlight Avengers.
West Coast Avengers, like Alpha Flight.
Oh God,
we won't get Alpha Flight until the X-Men, which leads into the other post-credit sequence. So at the end of the film,
baby, I hear the news is calling, tossed salad and scrambled eggs.
I thought it was funny the way that they kind of, even the movie doesn't care about the villain, because she's just kind of thrown into space and explodes. And then I'm like, oh, still got like 20 minutes left, it seems, at this movie. And you're like, okay, so the villain's just gone. So then, which they gave away in the trailers, of like punching a hole in space and time because of their light powers, just all nonsense, but whatever, who cares? Punches a hole in space and time, and then Monica has to go and sacrifice herself, much like,
repairing it on the other side, like,
to close it, and what Tony was going to do in the first Avengers movie when he goes up into space with the nuclear bomb and stuff like that. So anyways, Monica goes in, they give her powers through the bangles and Captain Marvel's powers, and then she flies through this space-time wormhole, and then and gets trapped on the other side. And then the movie ends with Carol stealing their home and then and then living in Louisiana, right? And taking their home and living on Earth. So Captain Marvel back on Earth. That's interesting. we get the tease about the Young Avengers. Kamala's back in Jersey, obviously, and then we get a post-credit scene with Kelsey Grammer reprising his role as Beast from the Fox X-Men films. Now looking a lot like Mark Ruffalo's Hulk with the CG face, but he's blue with fur.
Kelsey's one thing or was stipulation basically was like,
no more
do
makeup.
I have to wear the makeup again? It's like, no, we just can take some
I get
photos
actors,
of you.
I get actors probably not. I remember Dave Bautista at the end of the Guardians movies was just like, I can't do this makeup over and over again. That's why he wears a vest in most of the movie, or like a jacket and a vest, because they're like, okay, you don't have to paint your whole body. So anyways, Kelsey Grammer finally in the MCU. What everyone's like, oh, X-Men. You know who we all want to see? Kelsey Grammer, baby. He's back in Frasier on Paramount Plus, and he's back in the Marvel universe. So anyways, you get Monica Rambeau in kind of a hospital bed. She sees her mother appear, who is not who doesn't recognize her, is actually playing a character called, oh god, I knew this before, like I'll look it up in a second.
It's not Maria Rambeau played by Latasha Lynch, but it's still Latasha Lynch.
It is Maria Rambeau, but but she doesn't have a daughter in this universe, and she's, I think, one of the X-Men, not just herself. So and then Kelsey Grammer walks in as Beast, says that, Charles wants to see you, essentially, and then sets up more X-Men stuff. And whether this is the universe, it's not the universe we saw with her in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, where she was Captain Marvel. It's another different universe where, there's another Charles Xavier. Whether this is, we assume it's the Patrick Stewart one because of Kelsey Grammer as Beast. Although Kelsey Grammer as Beast could just be the older version of Nicholas Holt's Beast. So it could just be
the first class version, but that isn't that a part of the continuity of?
Yeah, I guess it is. Like, James McAvoy is supposed to morph into Patrick Stewart at one point, right? Like, morph.
This one's for you, morph.
Yeah. So, anyways, we get another X-Men tease, which continues that, because in Miss Marvel we got the tease that she is a mutant at the end of that series. So it really does seem like they are setting up the Secret Wars stuff, right? Like, all of this stuff has to come back in either Kang Dynasty or Secret Wars, most likely Secret Wars, with a little bit of setup in Kang Dynasty, whether that's where they still go. But I still think Secret Wars is on the table, whether they continue with Kang or not. I think that's the biggest question. But
and we're also going to ignore Namor for right now.
Namor will be back, but I don't know. Like, I didn't pop for Kelsey Grammer as Beast. I don't know. Like, the Fox X-Men movies, I do enjoy. I guess Kelsey Grammer being the one thing is sort of funny. And you assume that some people were saying that this is probably the future that happens at the end of Days of Future Past, where Wolverine changes things, and that's the future that continued after that movie, which would make sense. Or
maybe, with next year there only being one Marvel movie coming out, which is Deadpool 3. Maybe that,
which is going to be a good thing. Yeah. Yes. We could see this in that as well. Yeah. Which does bring in the Loki stuff too, right? Because the TVA is going to be in Deadpool 3 rumors, but it's looking like it will be that, right? Where, Deadpool has to jump around and either get the X-Men from the Fox universe or kill them or whatever he has to do. I don't know. It'll be interesting, but the post-credit scene I think is intriguing, but didn't really get me like, holy shit. Like, I did sort of have it spoiled. I didn't know exactly. I think I saw a tweet weeks ago that said Kelsey Grammer was going to be in the post-credit scenes of the Marvels, just randomly.
Kelsey Grammer will return in Avengers Kang Dynasty.
Or Secret Wars. So it seems like what we think they're going to do with Secret Wars is what they are going to do, which is going to unite every Marvel movie and every Marvel universe. So you're probably going to have the Spider-Men come back if you can get them to come back. You're going to get a lot of the Fox X-Men back. I wouldn't even surprise if you could get, deeper cuts like, the Fantastic Four, even, Chris
Evans
playing playing Human Torch at 1.2, right? Like, I
Johnny
think you're going to it's going to be fan service, the movie, which
Nick
again,
Cage is Ghost Rider.
Oh, dude, I would not be surprised if Nick Cage appeared in The Flash as a fake Superman he never played. Like, he's coming back as Ghost Rider, right? Like, I think essentially the ongoing theory that I've had and many people is that, yes, in like the time heist where they had to jump around and get all the Infinity Stones, they'll have to jump around and assemble an Avengers team throughout time and space and universes, right? So, and that's going to be your big portal moment in the thing. It'll be derivative a little bit, but it'll be fan servicey. But I mean, they did fan service very, very well in Endgame. So I have sort of faith that that's all you want from that thing, could be fan servicey. And I know in Secret Wars, it's not exactly what people think. Like, there's a place called Battle World where I believe it's Doctor Doom, not Kang or the Beyonder. And they think in the MCU, Beyonder is a separate character, but like Kang Prime might be a Beyonder Kang, and then that will be like the head Kang. And then he sends people to Battle World and from different universes. It gets really, just
convoluted.
Wait and watch it. Yeah, like unless you read through it and read all those comics, you just wait. And me trying to explain it doesn't, and who knows what they're going to do, because the MCU always does their own twist on things. So I think it's interesting setup, but I don't know when we're going to get that payoff, right? Like, we've been waiting for the payoff for multiple post-credit scenes from the Eternals, and
not even a payoff
Shang-Chi,
though, just a hint of like what to follow. Like, what's the through line for this phase, or what are we building towards? Like, what?
And I think Loki
what
season 2 does a good job, probably the best job of anything yet, that for being its own thing, but also making me go, okay, I kind of see where you're going with this a little bit. And the TVA being a part of Deadpool 3 means that will probably continue. But overall, fun movie. I'm excited for the future. It does give me hope, to bring back to what I said earlier. Because like, I was going through my MCU rankings with my wife, and we've got some stinkers, right? Like in the last phase and stuff. Ooh. Like, I had Eternals, Quantumania, Secret Invasion, all near the bottom of my MCU ranking, like near the bottom, with the Incredible Hulk, with Thor: The Dark World, like in that bottom 10. 3 recent projects were in that bottom 10. And then don't get me wrong, you have things like, I really enjoyed Miss Marvel. I was on the side of really enjoying She-Hulk for what it was. Like, and No Way Home, obviously, again, fan service the movie, but I think it worked really, really well. I liked Wakanda Forever. There has been some Guardians 3 quite a bit. Like, I think that's the most emotional I've been in a Marvel movie in a long time, where it actually hit me emotionally. And that hit me at a time where, after my mental breakdown earlier this year, like, it was the first movie going back to theaters that I saw all the way through. And after not going for 3-4 months, and, I think the emotion with Rocket's story in that movie just really connected with me. So that movie, I still think, is pretty high on my ranking. So, it's just been an up and down kind of thing. Right. And that's why I say don't count them out. I think if you get the right filmmakers, I think if you, again, calling for its funeral, the MCU's funeral.
Sorry, you did the thumbs up thing.
Did it? Sorry.
Like that.
You just did it. Yeah. Calling for the death of the MCU, or thinking that it'll go the way of the musical or the Western, or or the Dodo, I think is too early. Will superhero movies be the thing anymore? I still think they will be for a little while, until whatever the next thing is, whether they're video game movies or whatever the fuck we decide on as a society to really become popular. But I saw someone else tweet being like, hey, I was there throughout the time where everyone made fun of me for liking comic books, so I'm okay going back to that too, right? If they become this nerdy thing that only dorks like, and like niche thing, like if they're not mainstream anymore and the people kind of gave up on them because it became oversaturated, like, I'll probably always be there. And I still have faith though that we're very simple people, right? Like, and people love nostalgia, people love fan service. So like we're gonna get all those old Avengers back. We're gonna bring back all those characters and people will come back for that. But like how much can you keep going to that? Well, you still need to develop new characters that people give a shit about and new stories. So even with Loki talking about how it's such top tier MCU, that is a character that has been around for 15 years, right? It's not a new character. Yeah, they told new stories with it, pulling from a lot of different comics, but I don't, in Spider-Man, same thing, No Way Home being really, really great. Like, we need a Marvel movie to be like a new character. And I think like Shang-Chi got pretty close. Like, I think that movie is still pretty dope. Like, and sort of underrated at this point because I don't feel like many people talk about it as like top tier Marvel stuff. But I think that movie rules. But yeah, I don't know. I think calling for its death a little too early. That Variety article, while I understand and I thought it was fascinating, I can't fathom it just going away. But this box office does. I think it's a good thing that Deadpool 3 is the only movie we have next year. I will put it that way. Like a little bit
the
of a
oversaturation doesn't help when it comes to the number of storylines you have to follow in both a feature narrative format and long running series. So that's a lot for anybody to commit to when it comes to just one form of entertainment, but two over the spanning of different mediums. And what characters you want to follow. Do you watch them all? Do you only watch some of them? There's just a lot to consider. And even with those Easter eggs where they'll bring in characters that feel like, okay, they're, the F level character in a way to a storyline, like the way that, Charlize Theron's character was brought into the Doctor Strange movie at the end. And you're kind of like, okay, who is this? And it's like even Marvel fans at this point are like the comic book fans are like, really, you're bringing in this character? Yeah, or Harry Styles, right? As Thanos' half brother. Like, it just feels like, well, what's the point of all this? And it, some of these characters do feel like, okay, let's bring them in, see how the fans react, see how audiences react, and then we'll gauge from there if we put them in future Marvel movies, if we put them in Avengers films. Because even with the Guardians, it took 2 movies to really bring them into the rest of the MCU. And
they've still been pretty separate other than that.
Yeah, gotta keep them separated. So when you have Daredevil now being brought back in, when you have She-Hulk kind of being brought in, Deadpool, these characters, Blade, what is going on with Blade? Is that ever going to happen? I mean, Mahershala Ali is one of those guys that you want, like, if anything, he would make an amazing leader, going down the line, because he has, the charisma, the acting chops, just the incredible presence. But it just feels like, okay, that movie has been rewritten, scrapped, and then started again, and now I think they're trying to get back into production this year or next year. So like, a lot of this stuff kind of feels like it's half baked at times and not completely thought out, where it's like, okay, like even with Echo being a character, or Agnes Harkness, like Agatha Harkness, like, it just feels like, okay, well, these characters were kind of popular within the storylines that we were creating. Maybe we can,
make something. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, you don't have to.
No, really I agree with that. And like, if I'm playing like backseat, Kevin Feige, like if I fucking get to take his consciousness and take control, like the Disney Plus stuff, I think was unfortunately a little bit of the downfall, right? That contributed to the oversaturation, that contributed to the quality control. I think it's, when you try to do big, gigantic, blockbuster style stories on TV. It can be done. We've seen it in Game of Thrones, Last of Us. A lot of HBO stuff has huge budgets and it works. But they also put out one gigantic show every year, right? Maybe two, and the rest are kind of smaller dramas that don't cost nearly as much and stuff like that, right? Where Marvel, when you're trying to do the same scale you do in a $250 million movie, when you're doing it for TV, I feel like their approach needed to be different, and to have all the TV stuff also connect with the movies, like, I think was just a bad idea. Like, it's asking too much from people, to your point that you just brought up, Eric. Like, they almost needed to think of it as two separate things that are part of the same universe, but not part of the same story. Does that make sense? Like,
yes,
it's all taking place in the MCU, but the Disney Plus stuff needed to be almost focused like what Netflix did. I can't believe I'm giving them credit of street level, grounded, not special effects heavy stories that can connect to their own thing. So have two phases, right? You have the Kang multiverse story that's going on in the movies, and then in the TV shows, maybe you have the street level kind of thing where you could have built a Kingpin up or someone to be the Thanos of the TV shows, right? And then you have all those street level shows that are on Disney Plus. So you have two streams to follow. You can either follow all the TV shows, and then those will connect to a team up movie like they did with Defenders on Netflix. And then that's one thing. And then the movies are its thing, right? And then I feel like you could have had your cake and eat it too, to the point of, yes, it's all still connected. The TV show characters could show up in a movie, but it's probably only going to be an Avengers movie or something like that.
Or cameo, like Daredevil in No Way Home.
Yeah, or Valkyrie here, right? Like, it's just, but I know what you're saying, from the TV to the movies or something like that. But I just mean like a character just showing up, and yes, it's part of the same universe. They can talk to one another, blah, 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 blah. But you're not expecting Iron Man to show up in fucking the Disney Plus shows. There's never that expectation. But once you start having these gigantic characters that are either connected to another gigantic character that we know from the movies, but is never going to actually show up, or you try to do a big thing like Secret Invasion on a TV show, but the only Avenger you can get is Don Cheadle, and like all this kind of stuff. Like, it's,
and look how they messed that up on Secret Invasion.
I know. So I just kind of wish they kept them separate, right? Like,
compartmentalize the narratives a little bit more, right? And sort of keep them in with a structure.
Have the saga, and yes, maybe secretly the street level Avengers that you're going to set up could, be a huge part of the bigger saga, but like, you can reveal that much later, and it's not like they're still building to their own thing. It's right. It's like when we talk about seeing like the first half of a movie, where you're like, okay, I can't, judge it until the whole thing. It still needs to be its own thing, right?
Still waiting for Dune 2.
And too many of the TV shows, yes, they are their own thing, but I think they pitch this of like, it's all connected, it's all leading into the multiverse saga, it's all this, and like everything has a hint to it, or when it doesn't, people are disappointed. And I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking it, but like, that's what, in hindsight, that's maybe what I would have done, saying like, yeah, it's MCU, even with them making this new MCU label being like Marvel's Spotlight. What the hell are they calling it?
And that logo looks awful. Like, it looks like from the early 2000s.
Yeah. So even if you would have, when you first did Disney Plus, come up with some other label, right? And be like, yes, it's all MCU, but this is MCU TV. So but then I guess you don't want a lesser, like, I get their thinking of going, well, we don't want people to think that this is just diet MCU, right? Like, this isn't as good as the real thing. So I get them going, we're going to do film quality TV shows on Disney Plus, and then look at them a couple years down the line going, oh no, maybe we should have showrunners and show Bibles and like actually treat these like TV shows and not like movies. And you're like, yeah, when you split up a movie into 5 parts, it becomes disjointed, and the last episode feels like it's rushed, or it feels like it doesn't stick the landing because I'm watching it in little 30-minute to an hour parts that I forget what happened last week. And yes, you gave me a recap, but you lose momentum and all this kind of stuff, right? Like, if Captain Marvel was 4 episodes, if the Marvels was 4 episodes on Disney Plus broken up, I don't think it works as well as just being an hour and 40-minute movie, right? And there's many of those, like me going to school now to be an editor and stuff like that. And I know there's lots of people online that do this, and I haven't watched other people's things, but I would just be curious of doing my own version of like cutting some of these Disney Plus shows into movies and seeing if they work a little bit better.
Which they probably would, but it's also just fascinating what Kevin Feige chooses to make a series versus a film, because Moon Knight could have easily been a film. It could have been a 2-hour movie, but then you look at something like Armor Wars, which was supposed to be a series and now is being retrofitted as a film. So like, what was the thinking behind that in terms of
probably
that changing?
Scale, I'm assuming, is like, oh, what we want to do here is too big for a TV show when it comes to action set pieces or things like that. And I think even with Loki, there's been conversation where they had to rewrite episode 5 because the original script they had, even though everyone loved it, was just too big of an idea for them to do on Disney Plus, like for the budget or who they could get or something like that. So they changed it where, that makes me think, and I've seen other people talk about it too, where they might have wanted to time slip into different moments of the MCU history, right? But then they're like, they can't get all those people back. And like, it might have been like a really cool idea, but because you're on Disney Plus and you have a limited amount of budget per episode, like it doesn't work the same way. But
then it wants to still be as ambitious as a film, because you look at, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that series where that first episode like started off with that big kind of set piece where they're like, no, we're going to be as, bombastic and exuberant and literal as any of the films that you've seen. And then it's like, maybe we're going to scale it down a little bit.
Yeah. So
we spent all our budget on that first episode.
We're entering a brave new world of the MCU, no pun intended, but actually very much intended. But I think a little bit of a breather, a little bit of a break, even as much as I like the Marvels and as much as I fucking loved Loki, both seasons put together. I'm okay. Like Loki felt like the perfect finale. I've seen some people being like, that could have been the finale of the MCU and I would have been satisfied, right? Like if that's how it ended and that was the last shot we got, and that would have been incredible. I'm fine with it continuing. I want it to continue too, but I'm okay with like, this is what I said about Star Wars. Like Disney, I get it. You're a giant conglomerate. You want to make as much money as possible. You have theme park rides to sell. You got merchandise. Like I get
Martin
it.
Scorsese to annoy.
Yeah, but you gotta also think about it long term of like, if you just beat people over the head with something, they're gonna start to kind of push it away, right? Like if you're force feeding it, people are gonna go, I'm getting sick of this. I don't want fucking candy every day. Like I don't want candy every day. I love going to McDonald's, but if I had a Big Mac every fucking day, I'm gonna start to vomit and want something else. I want vegetables. So like, it's like, but then if I don't have McDonald's for a long period of time and then I have a Big Mac again and I'm like, fuck, I can't remember the last time I had a Big Mac, or it's been a while since I had a Big Mac. That Big Mac hits so fucking hard. I hope my analogy hits as hard.
But also it's a Big Mac though, right? Like that, I think that's another thing. It's like you go to McDonald's for the Big Mac or something like that. You're not going for the fish fillet. And I feel like Marvel is also trying to make the fish fillet of their universe.
Do you think a fillet of fish is like an elevated McDonald's item? Is that what you're trying to say? Or
well,
just like,
no. They're trying to elevate it. They're trying. So Kevin Feige's trying to take the fish fillet, the fillet of fish, and make like whatever that version is, like say Ghost Rider or whatever, Echo or someone like that.
Right.
And it's taking that and it's trying to make it the Big Mac and sell it to you like it's the Big Mac, and it's not the Big Mac.
But here, Iron Man was that. I will push back, where Iron Man was a character that wasn't a top tier Marvel character. Maybe not on the same level as Echo or something like that. I still think it's possible.
But there's still a lot of characters.
It's possible. Just make a good movie and good characters. That's all. I think you can take a character that's like an Ant-Man or something.
Use them wisely. Don't make them the centerpiece. Don't make them the individual film or series. Put them in a group. I think that's partly why we haven't gotten another Hulk movie really, because
the rights just went back to them, right?
Well, the rights just went back, but also look how big of a failure that character has been, and a bit of a clout on the brand. So I think when, you're going to the bottom of the barrel and you're trying to sell something that maybe would be best used as a side character or a garnish in something, and trying to make it more than what it is, I think that hurts it a little bit as well, where if you take it and use it appropriately and complement something, then you can sell that. But I don't want to have, the fillet of fish as my as my sort of main course. I want it
over and over again.
Yeah, and I feel like right now, like with that Ant-Man movie earlier this year, especially with that film being the third in that franchise, it's like we don't need 3 individual Ant-Man movies. we just needed one.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I think a little bit of separation from everything. Like, here's the future right now. So we had this year, I forgot, we had Quantumania, Guardians 3, and the Marvels. Next year, we are just getting Deadpool 3. The TV shows, we're going to get Echo in January. We're getting What If in December, I believe, right? Next month. And we're going to get X-Men 97 at some point next year. But I think those are the only shows as well that are in the pipeline, at least coming out next year. It looks like Daredevil, they're reshooting it. Benson and Moorhead. Is it? Yeah. It looks like they did such a great job on Loki season 2. Funny thing, right? Moon Knight, not so great. They bring them in for Loki season 2. They crush it. So they bring them on to Daredevil.
Kate Herron, I think, deserves a lot of credit though for setting them up for season 2.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just saying they did a good job with season 2 with Eric Martin, not to be mistaken with Eric Marchin.
God, I wish I had the money he was making.
And then, we only have Deadpool 3, and then I'll try to find the TV shows here in a second. But
that's good. I think taking that breather, because even on the DC side of things, superhero wise, I don't think we're getting much next year
until Superman in 2025, right?
Yeah, and maybe that is the silver lining of the actors and writer strikes now that they've been resolved.
From superhero stuff, yeah,
and so maybe we'll get back to some blockbusters that are a little bit more kind of a different time. Maybe something, because I mean, like next year, Warner Brothers has a lot of stuff coming up. They have the sequel to Dune, or Part 2. They have Furiosa, the Bong Joon-ho movie, Mickey 17. So there's a lot there. Maybe that'll be exciting in itself to see something that's not as kind of connected to anything else and just its own, specific point of view.
Yeah. And then you have Captain America Brave New World in February 14th, 2025. Fantastic Four, May 2nd, 2025. Thunderbolts, July 25th, 2025. And then Blade, November 7th, 2025. So back to 4 MCU movies in a year.
They'll move one of them.
Yeah, I know. There's no way. We don't need 4, ironically, for Fantastic Four. And then you have Blade in I said that part of that 4. And then you're getting Avengers Kang Dynasty May 1st, 2026, and Avengers Secret Wars May 27th, 2027. So keeping a year in between those 2 movies, which I think is much better than the 6 months that they said before.
No Shang-Chi sequel, huh?
Well, Shang-Chi isn't on this schedule right now. So the other movies, you have Armor Wars, Shang-Chi sequel, X-Men, and a No Way Home sequel. So those are the 4 that don't have directors or dates, other than Destin Daniel Cretton is supposed to be doing Kang Dynasty and maybe also the Shang-Chi sequel.
I also,
but I kind of find I
just forgot about this too, as well. And it's not directly connected, but I guess it's tangentially connected to it. Even though we're only getting 1 MCU movie, we're still getting Madam Web and Craven the Hunter.
And Madam
we're
Web
not including
probably Craven we're not, although they'll probably who the fuck knows what the post-credit scene. It'll be fucking Paul Giamatti's Rhino or something at the end. I'm the Rhino, and then he's like, I need you, Rhino. And then Michael Keaton.
A battle of the accents.
What am I doing here? So yeah, I think Madam Web. Here's the thing with Secret Invasion and the multiverse stuff that they're doing, like Madam Web and
Spider-Verse
could also all be doing their own things, but the Spider-Man movies might be doing their own multiverse thing, which they are obviously with the Spider-Verse movies. But then I wouldn't even be surprised to see, with that reveal that that the MCU is sort of in the same sort of universe, because we see the Prowler from the MCU in the Spider-Verse movie, that like there could be something there of crossover in those final movies too, if you're going to unite every single Marvel universe. So yeah. And then on the TV show side of things, I'm trying to see what we have up, because I want to see if I'm right. So Loki, yeah, so there's a lot that has been shot or has, at least been shooting. So we have What If, which is going to be December of this year, Echo on January 10th, and all episodes at once for Echo, as well as it being on Hulu as well as Disney Plus. So that's interesting. Then we have Agatha Darkhold Diaries. So that
name is changed multiple times, right?
Yeah. So that is late 2024, which does have Jack Schaefer coming back from WandaVision. So I am curious about it. Not that I ever needed an Agatha TV series, but I like.
But who knows? Maybe it'll be like Loki, where we're not expecting what it could.
Yeah, totally. Because WandaVision was great, right? And then you have Ironheart, which did shoot as well, right? Like they're already done shooting that too, right? Because
unless they're doing reshoots or like they're still working on post.
Because Anthony Ramos was the villain, right? And then there's rumors that Sacha Baron Cohen is playing Mephisto, which is incredible. And that's supposed to come out. It keeps getting pushed as well because of post-production, but that could be a special effects heavy show because of the whole Ironheart suit and stuff like that. And then with Agatha, I like that you have Aubrey Plaza and Patti LuPone and people in that series as well, but I have no idea what that series is going to be. So it looks like we are going to get Agatha and Echo next year. So 2 shows. I doubt we get Ironheart, but maybe we do.
It just really depends on like the post-production aspect of it, because that does seem like that will take the most time. But we haven't heard with these 3 shows, there hasn't been a lot of fan speculation or kind of like that oversaturation, in that way. So that's kind of nice, where it doesn't feel like you've been bombarded completely by them yet. So
I agree. As I yawn. All right. Well, thank you everyone to our deep dive into the MCU as well as the Marvels. We haven't even given a score to the Marvels yet. I really liked it. This is me probably being generous, but I'm going to give it a 3.5. I liked it quite a bit.
I'll give it 3 out of 5. It's a mid-tier MCU movie. It's better than Captain Marvel, but kind of forgettable overall in terms of like, once you've watched it, you probably won't think about it too much in terms of like where it is within the MCU, but it's fun. It's light. I think Nia DaCosta understood the assignment quite well. And actually, please get more movies that are an hour and 45 minutes within the comic book world. They don't all have to be self-indulgent and pretentious.
They aren't. Eric's just being a dick.
Well, some of them are with their length, so
I'm not going to comment on a certain 3.5-hour movie that came out that I still haven't seen.
That you still haven't seen, so that's not fair either.
That's why I'm not commenting on it. That's why I said.
But you are commenting on it by not commenting on it.
I'm not
by bringing it up.
on it. I'm not commenting on it. What are the chances I forgot. I'm like, oh, those are all the TV shows that have been announced. Never mind. Untitled Wakanda series, Spider-Man freshman year, which does look dope. Spider-Man sophomore year, I guess that's season 2 of that show. Marvel Zombies got announced. Wonder Man, that ain't happening. Nova series, that ain't happening. What If season 3, that probably will happen. And then Vision Quest, that I could see happening. But
if it's connected to WandaVision, it probably has a better chance
Agatha
of getting greenlit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, until next time, we'll be back to talk about the MCU, probably with What If. We'll probably do a review of that when that drops in December. Please go follow us on all those social medias, untitled_movies or at Matt Rohrbeck. Please go to our letterbox. That's our one-stop shop for everything at that same handle.
In review, you should plug that again.
Yeah, please go watch my kind of funny screencast appearance on Loki season 2. I was on the premiere episode and the finale episode. Had a ton. Love everyone over there. Had a really fun conversation. So you can go check that out on the Kind of Funny YouTube channel or the Kind of Funny Screencast podcast channel if you want to hear my full thoughts on Loki season 2.
And I'm Eric Marchand. You can find more of my video reviews on rogerstv.com/cinemascene. We have an upcoming interview on this podcast with Todd Haynes, the director of May December. What would a Marvel movie directed by Todd Haynes look like? I don't know. He probably is not interested. But I'm really excited to share that. And you can find me on all the social medias at EM6211.
Until next time.
Man, if they brought Dolph Lundgren's Punisher into the Secret Wars or Albert Pune's version of Captain America, that'd be pretty good.
I think they will, man. Bye, everybody.